Hi guys, this is Carrie from Scissors to Paper Crafting, bringing you the basics of card making and where in the world we came up with all the tactics we and others use when creating a card. I found one of the most confusing things when I began was paperweights. Now, I am not talking about this kind of paperweight. I am actually talking about this kind of paperweight. If you have watched any of our videos, you have heard me use the term pounds when describing a particular paper I'm using to create a card or other paper craft. Now, you may be wondering, where did I come up with all of these measurements? Well, the fact is, I didn't come up with them. Paper companies did. So in this video, we are going to discuss where and why all of this information is important. Stick around to the end of the video because I am going to show you how to take this and turn it into a card. Paper is created in a standard sheet size of 20 by 26 inches and then stacked in piles of 500 sheets. These stacks are then weighed and the weight becomes the poundage of that particular paper. Even though when we buy our paper in multiple sizes, such as 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12, or even 12 by 24, the weight from its original size remains across the board. So when I say that this card was made by 65-pound paper, and this card base is made by 110-pound, you understand where this is coming from. Now, why is this so important? Well, poundage of each cardstock makes a difference where the quality of our project is concerned. Using printer paper as an example, this is 20 pounds, and this paper is quite flimsy and not very strong. It doesn't have the weight to create a rich and sturdy card like the ones we create now as compared to the ones that we made when we were in grade school that Mom hung on the fridge. A teacher would come around and pass out colored printer paper, and we would fold it into quarters. Remember these? These were fun. She would give us markers or glue and glitter, and we would just go to town and have a whole lot of fun. Thanksgiving cards are the ones that I most fondly remember, where we took our hand and we traced it on a piece of construction paper and we cut it out, or the teacher cut it out, and we put that little hand on here and we made a turkey. It was a lot of fun. Mom would hang this on the fridge, but unfortunately, by Christmas time, it would be so mangled, she would have to take it down. I hope this clears it up for you. Leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'll be sure to reply. But while I'm thinking of it, if you find value in this or any other tutorial that we've done, be so kind as to click the like and subscribe button. It does help YouTube to understand we have a service that makes a difference. This sheet of 65-pound cardstock I typically buy at Michael's. You can also find 65-pound cardstock at Walmart. Nina has renamed their brand to Astro Bright. But the things that we get from a craft store and the things that we buy from Walmart, the craft store knows the things that are really important for us. Recollections knows that we want to know what paperweight that we're purchasing. So this one is clearly marked nice and big at 65-pound cardstock. It also tells me that there are 50 sheets in this paper without even really having to search for it. Even the measurement of the paper, the 8.5 by 11, nice and big that I can see and grab this and just go to the checkout counter. When I find myself going to Walmart, they actually put all of their paper together. A lot of times when I go, it's all mixed up. So finding 65-pound cardstock can be a little challenging. Not much, but a little bit. And when you're in a hurry and in a rush, little bits of time savers, like having it clearly marked on here, they do matter, especially if you have your kids with you and, they're doing their thing. Make sure that you look really carefully before you buy paper and that you're actually buying the 65-pound, which is marked right here. Now, I have to put my glasses on to see it, but it is there. They have a little scale where they're saying it's a medium to heavyweight paper. You can put it in the printer, and there's 50 sheets. And sometimes they'll even have the color. The one thing that they don't show down here is the size of the paper. It's actually over here, really, really tiny, where you can barely see it. Keep an eye out. Make sure that you are buying what you want to create your card. When I started making cards, the cardstock that I typically bought was 65-pound paper, mostly because it was the heaviest size paper that I could find in my area. Now, I still don't have a craft store near me that carries the higher weight papers, but I have extended to online shopping. A few of my favorite spots would be scrapbook.com, Simon Hurley, and of course, Amazon. Now, there is no set normal weight for a card base. How you select your base should depend on how you want your card to look and feel when you give it away. I began, and I still will on occasion, use the 65-pound cardstock, but I do like the weight and feel of a card in 100 to 130-pound cardstock, but nothing is wrong with either one. You know, though, when I am given or I'm shown a card from someone, I don't examine the card weight. I look at the card itself and what it's saying or what it's representing. I'd not recommend using anything lower than 65-pound paper to create a card base. Starting here gives you a nice sheet that's sturdy enough but thin, so if you add other elements to it, you'll have a nice quality finish to your creation, something you could be proud to give away. When making my paper selections, I do look more at affordability. I typically stay, like I said, in the 65 to 130-pound papers. We all tend to slide into a normal after we get a few cards under our belt, so to speak. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed by the masses of paperweights out there. Find one that feels right to you and stick with it a while. Things will come together for you once you begin creating cards in different sizes and styles. And the recipient, they're not even going to notice things like that. And after all, they are the ones that matter the most. I cut most of my card bases. Now, you can buy pre-cut cards or envelopes online or at most paper crafting stores. So let's talk about some differences. Pre-cut and packaged card bases come at a higher cost. Now, I won't say I've never bought them or used them. I absolutely have, and I still do on occasion. If I'm in a rush or say a last-minute event comes up and I need a card, I will most certainly use them. They are straight out of the box and ready to go in minutes. Just add a few elements, and in no time, you have a good quality card, shaving off the time it took to cut, score, and fold your own. You're not saving a ton of time here, but let's face it, minutes matter when you're in a rush. Pre-cut cards are more expensive. Scissors to paper crafting is a self-funded ministry. So I chase affordability. The best deal I can get that stays within my financial budget is the one I'm going to go for. Now, if I see pre-cut sets on clearance, I will snatch them up. The decision is pretty simple. Do you want to cut your base as an envelope, or do you just want to dive right in and start decorating and making cards? What I do is purchase the pre-made envelopes and I cut my card bases. Unless I'm making a bulk amount, the time saved matters to me, especially during major holidays or making invitations or large amounts of thank you cards from parties. It truly is situational. Another point that I'd like to make is creating my own bases gives me more versatility with my cards. More sizes, more shapes. Like if I have a scene or a design that I want to match in a paper pack that I have, a pre-cut card is not always going to be able to do that. The color will be off, the size will be off, so that doesn't always work out. It's what you want and what's most comfortable for you. If you want to buy pre-cuts and make them that way, go for it. Jump in, have fun. It's what being a creator is all about. In the US, we do 5 basic sizes for our card bases, the smallest being a 4-bar note card. This card measures 4 7/8 by 3.5 when folded. The cut size of this card is 4 7/8 by 7 inches. This is a fun little card and great for kids and their little tiny hands. I use this size when I'm creating thank you cards or party invitations, and sometimes I use it as an RSVP. Our next card is called an A2 card base. This is my personal go-to, and the measurement of this card is 4 1/4 and 5.5 when folded. The cut size for this card is 4 1/4 by 11. Using an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of cardstock, you will get 2 of these bases from one sheet. That is why this card is widely used by card makers. Another is the A6 card, measuring 4.5 by 6 1/4 when folded, with a cut size of 6 1/4 by 9. This is not a size that I typically use, but it is popular. An A7 card measures 5 by 7 when folded, with a cut size of 7 by 10 inches. I do use this card mostly, I'd say, if I'm using an embossing folder or for a birthday or special holiday like Mother's Day or Father's Day, a graduation card. That's when I would use the 5 by 7. Our last card in the US is called a slimline card, and it measures 3 3/4 by 8 3/4 when folded, and it has a cut size of 8 3/4 by 7.5. Now, these are the 5 basic measurements we use in the US, and you can readily find pre-cut envelopes very easily for all of these sizes. Now that we have discussed the weights of paper and the sizes of typical cards, let's move on to cutting cardstock. Card makers tend to use a paper cutter or trimmer to cut their bases. They do cut perfectly straight if you line your paper up correctly. When using a scissor to cut my card bases, I could always find flaws in my work. This wasted a lot of supplies trying to perfect this method, which, by the way, I never did. So having a paper trimmer was definitely a game changer for me. I'll provide a link in the description on the trimmers we use here at Scissors to Paper. There are many types and different sizes of trimmers out there. I started with the trimmer that had clear numbers and 1/8 of an inch tick marks, and I moved on to this Dress My Craft trimmer. After making cards for a while, I figured out what features were most important to me. I wanted 1/16 of an inch ticks along my ruler, allowing me to cut closer mat sizes for my cards. This one also has a scorer to score paper, which is definitely a bonus. Now, trimmers have both rotary blades on metal arms and ones like this with a blade inside of a plastic track. This one has measurements at the top, in the center, and on the bottom of the decking, as well as along the track where the blade rests. These vertical rectangles here are used to make sure your cuts are perfectly aligned. Sometimes factories make mistakes in their cutting. You will know for sure your paper is squared by taking a moment to be sure it lines up down these markings, as well as with your top ruler. My trimmer gives me loads of options to ensure that my cuts are perfect every time. I do highly recommend this Dress My Craft trimmer. One thing to look for in a quality trimmer is a sturdy arm with support. If your equipment arm wobbles, you could make uneven cuts and have to redo your card base. Now, this one doesn't move. It has feet on the bottom of it that hold it still, and the mat will move, the table will move. This trimmer arm is not going to move. When I extended this arm, you can see from the bottom that there are these little rubber feet that keep everything from slipping and moving when I cut. The bracing in this trimmer is even and thick and close together. That keeps the decking sturdy without warping or having the center sag and curl. All of these things are so important in a trimmer. Make sure to inspect yours regularly to avoid any misshaped cards. Let me quickly show you the Fiskars rotary trimmer. I do have one. You see, it has the ruler at the top and at the bottom, the same as my one. It has a vertical arm that extends, but the blade housing and the track are quite different. A lot of makers love a rotary trimmer, and had I started with one, perhaps I'd have stuck with it, but I do like my current Dress My Craft trimmer. So let's put this one away. Now let's talk about cutting a card base. The standard size of cardstock is 8.5 by 11. Let's create an A2 card base. This is the size I suggest you start with as you get 2 bases from one of these sheets. Begin by placing the 11-inch side of your paper against the top ruler in your trimmer and line the left edge to 5.5. Close your blade housing, and you're going to want to take the blade and press it upward against the paper. And you have now cut 2 card bases, 8.5 by 11, that are perfectly even. Now, there's another way to cut this. Let's take the same 8.5 by 11-inch paper, and this time, instead of lining up the 11-inch side, we're going to work with the 8.5-inch side. So, we will line this up against the top ruler at 4.25. Bring your blade down, close the housing, place your thumb on it, and press the blade upward into the top of the trimmer. When we use a trimmer to cut, you typically want your blade at the bottom of your cut and then push it upwards against the paper, allowing for a better cut than if I push the blade down away from the ruler. Doing it this way can cause your paper to shift and your cut to be uneven. So this method of cutting gives a different look and opening to your card base. It doesn't matter if you cut on the 11-inch side or the 8.5-inch side. You still wind up with 2 card bases. They just open differently and give you more of a variety that you can utilize as an A2. Pretty cool, huh? Now you can just fold these in half and begin creating them. But let me show you how to ensure that you have the most professional looking card base. And now let's talk about our next tool. This is called a scoring board. Notice that we have a ruler along the top and one running down the left side. Below our top ruler, we have these grooves that match up with every 1/8 of an inch tick mark. This tells us that each one of these grooves is 1/8 of an inch away from the next. Scoring boards like this one typically come with a tool to mark your score lines. Most attach somewhere on the scoreboard. This is an easy way to keep track of them. This one comes with an envelope maker as well, and both are located underneath of the unit. They slide out like this. I do use a different scoring tool than the one that came with my board. There are many on the market today in all shapes and sizes. The smaller the blunt end on the scoring tool, the deeper you can get your score line. A A word of caution though, if you score too deep or too fast, you can rip your paper. I found this great scoring tool set from EK Success. It fits my needs perfectly as I use different paper weights when creating my card. This ball I use for 65-pound cardstock, and this smaller one I found works better for the heavier weights like 80 to 130-pound paper. Again, we can have differences in our toolkits based on our individual needs and preferences. You may like the tool that comes with your board, or even a bone folder with a blunt tip like this one. These are perfectly fine scoring tools, and they're made for these boards. I just enjoy the control I have found with EK Success. You may feel differently, and that's fine. Again, it's all up to the creator. And there are so many vendors and so many new things coming out for card making. Find what does it best for your creations. Now I think we're ready to mark our score and get a card base done. If you remember, our card folded is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay our card base down, and we're going to place the paper along the scoreboard with the end we need to score at the top, meaning we are after a folded card of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So if we lay the 5 1/2 inch side down the left side of the scoreboard, and we let the longer 8 1/2 inch side at the top, and we run our score down at 4 1/4, we will have the correct size card. So grab your scoring tool, and we're going to score this at 4 1/4. Now remember, I don't want to do this too fast, and I don't want to press too hard, but I do want to give an even pressure as I'm moving down the score line, and I want to make sure that my ball does not accidentally come out. So I'll do this a couple of times, getting a deeper push on the paper, setting it deeper into the groove each time I do it until I have the score that I'm after. Pressing down from the start of the paper and keeping an even pressure as you go down, you can feel the give of the paper as it indents into the scoreboard. Just be careful not to rip the cardstock by forcing the score. Paper can be trained to ripple or fold by bending and manipulating the fibers, and that is exactly what we are doing when we make these score marks. I want to point out your paper now has a score in it with a smooth indentation and a bumpy one on the other side. This bump on the back is called a mountain, and you will hear these terms used in folding cards all the time, and this is where they come from. They're pretty easy to grasp once you understand them. In folding your A2 card, we want to be sure to fold the valley of your card, which is the indentation. You spent the time training the fibers to move with this direction, and that's why we do it this way. An easy method to remember: inward is a valley. It goes inside the card, and outward is the mountain. The groove goes on the outside of your card. Easy, right? I have yet another trick for you to have the most professional card base you can. We do that by using our scoreboard to fold up our card. So we'll place it back down on the scoreboard, and we'll make sure that this corner stays in the corner of our scoreboard. We will then lift the other side and push it into that same corner and finger crease the card right on the score mark. So I can now fold my card perfectly and make sure that it lines up corner to corner every time. This gives me such accuracy in folding my cards, and it's an easy way to do it. Okay, now that we have scored and finger folded our cards, The next thing we're going to do is we're going to press these creases even tighter, allowing our cards to lay perfectly flat instead of having this in the center of them. And we achieve that with this type of bone folder. This has a beveled edge here, and this edge is what I use to press down the side fold of the card. And I do use quite a bit of pressure, which is why this bone folder is a little bowed. But it works. It works really well. You can press against this and score it down and actually close or come close to closing that gap in the center. It just adds a professionalism to your card, and it really makes it stand out. Cards have two ways of working, depending on how you place your decorations, and we're going to call them top or side folding. Holding a card in this orientation, we have a side folding card. But if we turn it, it now becomes a top folding card. So depending on your project, you now have 4 different ways that you can orient these card bases to create something wonderful. One way to give a card the best presentation would be to add a mat to your card base. You can do this with a die cut or a paper trimmer. There are many choices you have here to really make a color pop and bring dimension to your card. Keep in mind, the more layers you add to your topper, the heavier your card is going to be. But before we get into that, let's do what I promised at the beginning of the video, and let's create a card. I am going to do an A2 side folding card. And I chose to make a card using some different elements to help welcome my granddaughter into the world. So I found these cute little embellishments and even a medallion to put inside of the card. I have a bundle of joy here. Then there's a few other things that I'm going to put aside. Before I get into this, though, we're going to make a card mat for this guy. Now, I chose to use both pink and green since I do have some green in this, and I really kind of wanted the leaves on these guys, which is going to be my top layer, to pop. And they do when you place them all together. So let's make the card mats. Okay, so to make a card mat, you've got a couple options. You can do a 1/16 of an inch, you can do an 1/8 of an inch, you can do a 1/4 of an inch. It all depends on the look that you're going for. Now, I like to do an 1/8 of an inch around my card. I think that that looks so pretty when it's layered up like that. So we know that my card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut this at 4 1/8 from the side. I'm going to cut it 5 1 2 3/8. It's late. Sometimes I have to count. All right. So by cutting off these two sides and shaving them down, I now have a perfect 1/8 of an inch around my card base. Now let's go with the pink one. Now I'm not going to cut the pink one the same size. I'm actually going to go an 1/8 of an inch shorter. So we went to 4 1/8. Now we're going to 4 inches. I'm going to cut it from along the side. And we went 5 3/8 on this one. So we're going to go to 5 1/4 if I can find it. There it is. It's really awkward sometimes when you have a mic and a camera to see what it is that you're doing. And maybe one day I'll put my face cam on in front of me and actually show you guys what a creator goes through when we're making a video, because sometimes we look pretty darn silly trying to line some stuff up. You can do this in a couple different ways. We have what's called dimensional foam dock. They come in squares, they come in triangles, they come in octagons, they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But you could actually take these guys and put them, I'll show you. Let's glue the first one down. This is actually 110-pound cardstock. So let's glue the first one down. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. When you apply your glue, I use Barely Arts glue. That's my favorite, but there are many glues out there. And we will be talking about adhesives in the next video. So you just place some glue down. Keep in mind, camera adds about 10 pounds to glue, just like it does to us. So we're going to line up our base to the center of the card, letting all of our edges peek through evenly all the way around. I'm going to press it down by hand first, and then I'm going to use this bone folder that has this like little extension finger in it. And this spreads the glue out that I just put on the card. So it stays nice and uniform between the card mat and your card base. And this stuff sets pretty quickly, so it's already stuck. I couldn't move it if I wanted to. It would rip the paper. So we have our first layer glued down. That does add a little bit of dimension, doesn't it? But if I do this, if I place these guys on, we're not only going to get another layer, but we'll get a little shadow behind it and really give this guy some dimension. You'll also see this with some of the embellishments that I'm going to be putting on this card. To reveal the back of this, I do use the pokey side of one of my EK Success tools. Just makes it easier. Some people do it with their fingers. I am not that talented. I cannot do this with my fingers. I have to pull it up with the tool first and then pull the paper off. Crazy, huh? Before I got this tool, I used to have to ask for help. I don't know if it's because I can't see or because my fingers have been accused of being fat before. I don't know. But this works pretty good. So now I will line this one up the same as the other, just letting the edges peek through. I don't think I have, yeah, I do have it at the top. Just letting that green color kind of peek through. And this really gives, look at that dimension. It really gives the card some dimension. And that green underneath, there's a shadow from the pink. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it is a very, very pretty look. Next thing I'm going to do is one more layer. This is going to be the topper of my card. I have my base, I have what's called a double mat, and now I'm using a topper. And my topper is going to be a little bit smaller than my second mat. Sometimes keeping track of what you cut last is a challenge. So this paper needs to be cut on this side. And we're going to do this one at 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So now this guy is going to show a bit more of the pink because I did make this cut a little bit smaller. And we're going to glue this guy down with my art glitter glue. Now, if you decide to purchase art glitter glue, make sure that you get the one with the precision tip. That's this silver thing at the end. That way you have more control over how much glue is coming out. And when you only want a little bit, you'll only get a little bit. I tend to forget to mention that in my videos, but I'm glad I got it in this one. Now I just kind of push this down. I'm going to use my bone folder, but I'm going to be careful not to squish my little foam dots. I'm going to kind of go around them like this. And there we go. So now we have, I don't have this planned out. I really don't. I don't. I just grabbed it. Okay, so now I have some embellishments. That's what these are called, or some people call them ephemera. I'm going to pop up Bundle of Joy. That's definitely going down. Now, this is a chipboard piece. See how thick it is? So this is really going to do a lot for this card. This guy's not being mailed, so I don't have to worry about the weight of the front of this card. I don't have to worry about having to add extra postage. I can just hand it to my son when we go to lunch this week. Hopefully this week. He's a busy guy, and I'm a busy gal. Between doctors and my YouTube channel, and you guys, I have a lot of responsibilities. Okay, so let's kind of pull these off. These baby bottles are so cute. Okay. Now you can find stuff like this in a card store and have a card done fairly quickly. These guys are not very sticky. So I'm going to add just a little bit of glue to their dots to make sure that they stay where they're supposed to stay. Now I want the Bundle of Joy to be red, but I do want this bird's wings to pop off the card a little bit. So he kind of looks like he's flying. And I'm going to do something else in a moment to really let everybody know that he is flying. So we'll put the little bassinet down toward the bottom. Isn't that cute? He is getting ready to deliver a baby. I can't wait until she is born. It's not going to be until January, so I have a little bit of time, but I am super excited. Super excited. So we'll put, let's kind of float the baby announcement and the bottle up in the air a little bit. And we will drop that one first. How about up here? On there. And I have this cute little bunny that I'm going to add. So we're going to pop him down here. And then one more that's stuck to my hand, which is this cute little purple heart with a gem in the center. So you see, I've added a lot of different things on this card, and it's just so darn cute. But the one thing I wanted to do was I want to make this bird look like he's flying. And I can do that with a multi-liner, or I have jelly roll pens. But what I do is I put little lines and tick marks around. So he kind of looks like he came from this direction. And he's headed up. Isn't that cute? So there we go. There's our card. This is an A2 card. Finished. It will fit into an A2 envelope, which, as I told you, I buy mine off of Amazon. I don't want to mess up the pieces, so I want them to have a couple minutes to set. But as you see, it'll just slide right into that envelope. And on the inside of this card, I want to place this pretty medallion that I will be able to write on. just to kind of put a little bit of color and a little bit of something in the card. There's lots of options. They're endless, endless. Please put into the comments which orientation of the A2 card is your favorite. I would love to know. And we do have a Facebook group called Scissors to Paper Crafting. You are invited to join us every Friday. I do a live show where we do give away some of the creations that we make. And sometimes we have gift cards and stuff like that. But most of all, we have just a fantastic time creating cards and talking and chatting and laughing and just really super, super, super enjoying ourselves. So I hope to see you there. I really do. But before you go, let's talk about postage. When sending greeting cards through the United States Post Office, a typical card can be mailed for the cost of one postage stamp. Now, in 2023, a 1-ounce first-class mail postage stamp costs 66 cents at the post office. You can purchase a scale from Walmart or other retailers to double-check your card's weight before sending it out. I will include a link in the description giving you an overview of U.S. postage costs. Let me know in the comments which orientation you like the most. Now you have an in-depth understanding on how to create the perfect card base for your projects. I plan to make this a series and elaborate more on matting and layering, on inks and stamps, die cuts, embossing supplies. Subscribe to Scissors to Paper Crafting and use the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. I do post videos every Tuesday, and we do have a Facebook group as well. You are welcome to join. We have a Friday live show that is a lot of fun. We do that at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have giveaways. I do a small tutorial. It is a ton of fun with a lot of participation. So join us, Scissors to Paper Crafting on Facebook. And remember, like I said, I post new videos every Tuesday. So I really hope to see you again. And as always, happy crafting!